The No BS Spiritual Book Club, the only no BS guide to the best spiritual books to inspire your own journey of self-discovery. Here's your host, founder of the No BS Spiritual Book Club, Sandie Sedgbeer.
Hello. My guest this week describes herself as a woodwife, married to the stones, the dirt, the mountains, and the trees. And she means it. She's not speaking in metaphor. She is, by her own account, a witch, more interested in ecology than theology. Someone who prefers the fertile darkness over what she calls fluorescent enlightenment. I love that phrase. And that alone should tell you this conversation is going to be a little different. Perdita Finn is the author and co-author of 4 books, including Take Back the Magic, Conversations with the Unseen World, and The Way of the Rose, The Radical Path of the Divine Feminine, Hidden in the Rosary. Her latest book, Mothers of Magic, Summoning the Wisdom of Our Ancestors, is exactly what the title promises, a summons. Not a theory about the divine feminine, but an actual invitation to reconnect with the ancestral mothers who predate patriarchy, who were systematically silenced, and who she believes are still very much available to us if we know how to call them in. Perdita Finn, welcome to the No BS Spiritual Book Club.
Sandie, thank you so much for having me on. I'm delighted to be here.
Delighted to have you. Before we discuss the books on your list, tell me about the process of putting it together, because it does read like a very deliberate self-portrait.
You know, I'm a voracious reader, and I've always been a voracious reader. I am a book lover at heart. I am a storyteller by profession. And, I'm the kid who, as a little girl, went to the library in the summer and said, I'm going to read every book in the library. You know what I mean? And just, it's a great pleasure for me. But for the past 30 years, my husband and I have been asking the question, how do we meet this moment of climate change, of societal collapse and transformation spiritually? How and what would that look like? So my reading about this goes everywhere, to science, to paleoanthropology, to history, but also, of course, to the great storytellers, because it is storytelling, I believe, that most transforms us. We need good stories. We need better stories. We need new stories about who we are and where we're going.
So how challenging or not was it for you to distill your list down to just 10 titles?
I've learned, Sandie, to trust that I'm not doing this alone. I'm doing this with all of the ancestors and ancestral mothers and grandmothers. So I did it in about 10 minutes.
Good. That must be a record.
I mean, could I have gone on for another 40 minutes? Of course I could.
Yeah.
But this was the cream. I gave you the cream off the milk.
Yeah. And yes, and it's very creamy cream, I can tell you. So what did the list tell you about yourself that you weren't expecting?
That's such an interesting question. I think it shows me that I pull from so many different sources, that I find wisdom in unexpected places. I can find wisdom from the most fact-based, PhD trained scientist, and I can find wisdom from the witchiest, wildest storyteller. And that I am somebody who's radically inclusive. And I do think that's true about myself, that I can find wisdom from a child and a children's book, and I can find wisdom from an elder, and I can also find wisdom from a stone and a tree. So I am a very inclusive person.
So let's talk about your books, and we're going to start with the one that was first on your list, Life Everlasting, The Animal Way of Death by Bernd Heinrich. That was published in 2012, I believe.
Yes.
Tell me about that book, and why is it on your list?
It's the first book on my list. And it is a book that I found so ecstatic and transformative that I tell everyone about it. Now, of course, it's written by a University of Vermont professor. It's not a book a lot of people know. It certainly didn't make any bestseller lists. But Hernt is a naturalist and a biologist, and he's fascinated with the way animals and plants in the wild decay. And so the first story he tells in that book is about a mouse dying in the woods. We never come across dead animals in the woods, almost never. And I know this because I tromp through the woods every day. You almost never see a dead animal. Because what happens is the moment an animal dies, the party begins. The beetles arrive, the worms arrive, the maggots arrive, everyone arrives. And in this story, he tells about a mouse dying, and all of the boy beetles go, "Oh my gosh, it's a house. We can get married and have children." And they get on top of the mouse and they do this ecstatic little dance. And their little ecstatic Dionysian dance calls in all the female beetles who all say, "Oh my gosh, you found us a house. You found us a home." And they make love, and then they have their baby beetles inside the mouse, which they then bury in the ground, which will then feed their babies when they're born. And what Hernt shows us again and again in the animal way of death is the first rule of what I call ecology, not theology. Everything in the natural world eats, and every body is eaten by something else, and that includes us.
So that, sparks a question. Does that mean we're doing the wrong thing with cremation?
Well, it's so interesting about cremation. My husband and I, we're in our late 60s, so we're having this conversation, right? And if given my druthers, I want my body taken out into the woods like the mouse, right? A deer once died in my yard, and the vultures came and the coyotes came, and in 3 days, every bone of her was gone. And then a month later, mushrooms sprouted up where her blood had gone into the land. Now, this would be my preference. I would love to be food for the coyotes and the vultures and the owls and the hawks. I would love to, and the crows, and the maggots and the beetles, right? All of them. The laws of my country prevent this from happening. So we do the best we can in the world we live in, right? We do the best we can. My mother said to me, "Sandie, do something useful with my ashes. Feed them to my roses."
Mm. Yeah, good idea.
Right?
Yeah.
She got it.
So
Understood it.
book number 2 is a book that helped you say, become a shape shifter and begin the journey to remembering how little you know and remember. And that book is A Natural History of the Senses by Diane Ackerman, published in 1990.
Yeah, I read that book when it came out. It was serialized in the New Yorker, and then her book came out. And we talk about reality, right? But we talk about it from an anthropocentric, a human point of view. And our reality as human beings is primarily visual. We are the beings that read, that see, that make visual art. But other animals lead with different senses. A bear, I have a lot of black bears in my yard, has a nose 500 times more sensitive than a bloodhound. Its experience of the world walking through the same forest I walk through is profoundly different. Its reality is profoundly different. It can smell a potato chip bag in the garbage, 3 miles away. An owl has a sense of hearing so acute that it can hear a mouse's heartbeat 3 feet under the snow from up on high. And I once rescued an owl, and it had been hit, and seemed to be in shock, and I'd called a rehabilitator. But while I was trying to get it out of shock, I held it against my chest to keep it warm so it didn't die. And it ended up flying off after about 10 minutes. And the next day, that owl began showing up every day outside my office. And I asked an owl expert about this, and he said, "Oh, he recognizes the sound of your heartbeat, and he came looking for you."
Oh,
So what I'm curious about is I want to undo my sensory gating. You know, everybody right now wants to take ayahuasca or some mushroom or have some psychedelic experience. And what I want to say is the psychedelic experience is our imagination and the ability to feel our way into these other ways of knowing of other creatures on this planet. And that was my spiritual initiation into what I call animism, that book. It's a beautifully written book. I mean, Ackerman has a heart any owl could hear.
So book number 3, Other Lands, A Journey Through Earth's Extinct Worlds by Thomas Halliday, published in 2022. And you said that this very serious journey into deep time by a very serious academic is also the most profound example of channeling that you've
Yes,
ever
indeed.
experienced.
So
How
he
so?
goes back in time, following the contractions and expansions of life on this planet back to the very beginning. And it's in some ways a very scientific book at looking at, you know, biological processes, geological changes. And yet when he goes to these places where these changes are happening, at the moments they're happening, it's really like he's there.
Mm.
And he makes it come alive with so sensually, with so many different senses, that you stand with the dinosaurs as the meteors fall. You stand there on the edge of the Mediterranean Sea when it begins as a wall of water crashing from the Atlantic across these plains, obliterating land, you know, millions of years ago. And I think he was a channeler. I think you read it, you tell me. And it's one of my favorite books. I read it again and again. And the reason it's the most hopeful book I've ever read is what he says is this, what I call the second ecological principle, which is, yes, everything that eats is eaten, but everything comes back. There are these contractions of life on this planet. And then there are these beautiful blossomings.
Yes. Yeah. Mm. Book number 4. This was an interesting one. The Alphabet versus the Goddess, The Conflict Between World and Image by Leonard Schlein, published in 1999. I could not find this book on Goodreads, and that intrigued me. So I went hunting for it. And I also came across the fact that he's the chief of laparoscopic surgery at California Medical Center, or was the chief. I don't
Was.
know if was the chief, yeah. So, yeah, I mean, it just looks like an incredible book. I
It
want to
is.
read it.
You must. It's really, for me, it's an essential book of looking at the origins of human violence. And one of the questions he asked and looked at, and he makes a very, very convincing case. And many people have piggybacked off of his original thinking and original research, including, of course, David Abrams and you know, and his books on animism. But one of the things he says is that every time human beings invent a process of abstraction, we become more violent. It's as if we become more distant from our animal way of being, our holistic, inclusive way of thinking. And he looks at the invention of the phonetic alphabet, the invention of the printing press, and various other moments, and shows that how these various inventions really change our brain chemistry. And they change the way we think, that when you look at hieroglyphics, you have to read them holistically. And when you're reading a phonetic alphabet, you're reading in a linear pattern, and you begin to think in straight lines, begin to perceive the world in pieces and components instead of holistically. And then what does this do to our more what he would call feminine ways of thinking and feminine inclusive ways of being in the world? He makes a very compelling case that it was the invention of the printing press that unleashed the witch burnings across Europe. And I am quite convinced by it. And I'm a writer, okay? and so it's made me question and explore what it means to be a writer in this world and the problems with writing. And in fact, I've become more and more interested in oral storytelling because of this book. Schlane died before the rise of social media, but he would have predicted the world we're living in right now. He would have said this new medium is going to create violence. He took
Why?
looked it's
Why?
very interesting.
Why? What is the mechanism here? What is actually
Okay.
happening?
I'm not a scientist, so I'm going to do my best, okay? He talks about the difference between right brain and left brain thinking. And the difference about I can never remember which is which because I am the person who's the holistic thinker. I can never separate it. But when we move towards that more masculine, linear, compartmentalized thinking, we begin to extract ourselves from the world. And also these new mediums create fear in people. And the people who learn to use them usually frequently initially for violence. So radio, the invention of radio brings us Hitler, right? The invention of social media has brought us in America Trump. You know what I mean? Like he would make a direct connection. And the second book printed by the Gutenberg Press was after the Bible was the Malleus Maleficarum.
Mm. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a
Big one.
big, thick book. It looks at a lot of things. He's a big thinker. He's a foundational thinker.
We can't go back. I mean,
No.
technology is here to stay. Digitization of everything,
Read
even
other
our
lands.
language.
Read other lands. We'll be a thin film of heavy metals in a million years,
Yeah, we need to hurry up and really develop our telepathic abilities.
I know.
Yeah. Yeah. Book number 5, Witch Craze, A New History of the European Witch Hunts by Anne Llewellyn Barstow, published in 1994. This is another one that immediately, just reading your description, I had to, write the title down and read it for myself because, yeah, we need to hear this. Tell us what we need to hear.
She was an amazing researcher, and I think she is the best researcher about the European witch violence. And she is so methodical, and she wants to name these women. She wants to give them back their lived experience, and she makes a desperate plea for other researchers to do what she's done and to go into these old records. Do you know that there is no coordinated look at all of the witch violence in the Americas? Scotland has begun to do this, but Germany hasn't, France hasn't, Sweden hasn't. You know what I mean? Like, she really wants to look at what happened with the publication of the Malleus Maleficarum, and she's very, very fierce. She doesn't have the idea of the witch craze doesn't get in the way of the reality of the witch craze in this book. What did it mean if you killed every woman in a village, as the Inquisitors did? If you killed every girl, every mother, and every grandmother, and I don't mean just killed them, I mean you sexually tortured them, murdered them publicly, what happens for 100 miles in every direction? What happens for 100 years in every direction? What kind of fear is sowed into the souls of women after this event? The other thing that I really love about Barstow is, of course, she says, the violence didn't stop. It just became colonialism against Indigenous and Black and brown women. And so it's really important to look at what is the eradication of women's ways of knowing and being in the world about.
And, I mean, you state that that most of all she shows that this was not the work of superstitious,
No.
ignorant men. It was highly educated men.
That's the most interesting detail to me, and that was what was transformative if you look at it. Edinburgh, Germany, London, it was the place this violence was enacted by men who wanted intellectual power. She even shows, that horrible play, The Crucible, by the awful Arthur Miller. He makes it seem like what happens in Salem is because of a bunch of hysterical girls, right? Of course, it's the girls' fault. It's Eve's fault. What he shows is what Barstow shows is, look, it was the men from Harvard who came up and built the gallows and set up the courts.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was important that these women, being empowered by the indigenous community, being empowered by this fecund natural world, were frightened and fast.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, powerful line in your written description, which people can read on the website, is the more rational men became, the more they hated women's bodies.
Exactly.
Yeah.
C.S. Lewis once depicted the ultimate evil as a man's disembodied head. And I think this is what we see with these narcissistic tech bros right now, right? They want to upload their consciousness to the clouds. You know, they want to be done with women's bodies altogether.
Hmm. Yeah. Okay, book number 6, Bitch, on the Female of the Species by Lucy Cook, published in 2022.
This one is so much fun, I can't tell you. She's a journalist, and she went to look at all of the ways and really deconstruct all of our ideas about sexuality and female sexuality. And it's really fun. I mean, it looks at all the ways, you know, if everything that eats wants to be eaten and everything is always changing, the third ecological rule for me is life wants more life. Every firefly wants to make more fireflies. Every plant wants to drop its seeds. You know, this desire, this eros at the heart of the world is what redeems our relationship to our bodies. And this book will make you embrace your body and your desire with such, whether you're a hyena or, you know, she looks at, you know, animals that change sexes to you know, copulate with themselves, animals that clone, animals that have sex with everybody. I was thrilled to discover that birds, which were always told are monogamous, a lot of birds are monogamous. You know, they mate for life, but they don't copulate for life. They will mate for life. But when it comes time to have their babies, they go out and they have some adventures and then they come back. So, so it explodes this, you know, virgin horror idea that was been posed on us, you know, by a lot of the first nature writers. It's really fun. It's so much fun and so interesting.
I'll add that to my list as well.
Yeah.
Book number 7, Earth Abides, George R. Stewart, published in 1949. And this is a novel.
Yeah. It's a novel that inspired a work of nonfiction called The World Without Us by Alan Weisman. But I would go back to the first book because it is the first post-apocalyptic book ever written. And I am a fan of post-apocalyptic literature. My husband and I read it all. But no one has ever equaled Earth Abides. Stephen King based The Stand on it, but he missed the message of The Earth Abides. And the message of this incredibly beautiful book is, yes, human beings, like all other species on Earth, are going to eventually disappear. But life on this planet isn't going to disappear. And what's going to happen as our populations decrease? What's going to happen? How is nature going to right itself? But it also looks at how are human beings going to navigate this change? And it concerns a biologist, much like himself, who originally thinks that his job is to communicate and restore civilization, and then realizes that his only work is to accept the restoration that nature is offering him.
Mm.
It's beautiful. It's a very loving, beautiful book. Just ecstatic.
Book number 8, The Hymn to Dionysus by Natasha Pulley, published in 2025.
I don't know if you know Natasha Pulley. She's a British writer. She's young. She's in her 30s. I can't believe this is a book about Dionysus, and I'm a fan of Dionysus, and my daughter's written books about Dionysus, and but this is the best book I've ever read about Dionysus, and it really looks at what happens. It's the Bacchae, written not from the civilized standpoint, but the standpoint of a soldier with PTSD who meets Dionysus and falls in love with him. And it is one of them. It's a love story. It's a queer love story. It makes you, just as Earth Abides does, it makes you cheer on the vines as they bring down the walls. it is an extraordinary book, and she's an extraordinary writer. I read this book, and then I went and read everything she read. I will read any. I'm a fan beyond measure of this young woman. She is a million years old.
Yeah, aren't we all?
I know. Well, she's
Yeah.
really channeling.
Yeah. So, book number 9, Life After Life by Kate Atkinson, published in 2013. This was made into a TV series. Very, very good. Yeah.
Very good. And I love the TV series, and it has so much, it's really beautifully done, but it doesn't capture the complexity and multiplicity of the book. And this is about a woman who lives a single life, thousands and thousands of different ways. And it asks the question, what is the point of life? How do choices make a difference? So some lives end very quickly, some lives go on, but there is an accumulation of wisdom from life to life. And of course, ultimately, the question is, what does one do if one begins to realize that everything comes back? We will be reborn into the worlds we've made. Um, I should say that Kate Atkinson is a famous mystery writer, detective series writer. And so this is a very thrilling book. Do you know what I mean? It's very exciting to read it and compelling, but I do think it may be the best book I've ever read about the reincarnate experience.
Number 10, Dancing in the Streets, A History of Collective Joy by Barbara Ehrenreich, published in 2006.
You know, Barbara Ehrenreich, she's gone now, but she was a great believer in social justice and social change. But this is one of her earlier books that looks at dancing and revelry. What disrupts civilization? And it looks at that Dionysian urge. And she's very fascinated by medieval feast days. I did not know till I read this book that 200 days of the year were designated feast days in the medieval world. Life was for feasting more than it was for working. Working was to make the feast days happen.
Mm.
And when those feast days were a disruption of the social order, you would frequently dress up in costume and masks. Men would become women, women would become men, kings would become peasants, peasants would become kings, everybody would become animals. And they included dancing. And why do so many religions, the first thing they do is forbid dancing?
Yeah.
And she looks at this throughout history, and you know, you read this book and you want to get up and dance, and you want to invite everyone to the dance. And while I'm doing this, my puppy is asking to come to the dance as we talk. Clark, my husband.
So this book is the foundation of a feast day for Our Lady of Woodstock, which
It
happens
is.
every year at the shrine that you and your husband created.
I mean, this is a long story. We tell it in the trilogy of our Way of the Rose books, a book my husband wrote called Waking Up to the Dark, a book we wrote together, The Way of the Rose, and I finished the story and Take Back the Magic. We created a shrine to Our Lady of Woodstock, and because of the events that unfold in those books. And now on June 15th and 16th every year, people come from all over the world in devotion to that lady to share their miracle stories of what she's created for them and to create a celebration. We just finished it a few weeks ago, and it includes chanting and prayer, but lots of dancing, lots of food, lots of joy, lots of fun. And it goes late into the night, and then everyone sleeps in, and it continues the next day.
How long have you been doing that?
15 years.
Wow.
And now we have people coming from all over the world, and many, many hundreds of people showing up. We want to reinitiate, and we're hoping to do some Dionysian theater next year. I've got a lot of theater. I was a theater major in college, so I have a lot of, ideas about what we're going to do next year. Every year it gets better.
Very cool. Very cool. So that's your 10 books. I want to talk to you now about your own books. Mothers of Magic. I mean, that's structured as a 9-month gestational journey. What are we being reborn out of and into?
Being reborn out of 8,000 years of patriarchal indoctrination back into what I call the matrosphere, We're being reborn out of those straight lines back into those inclusive circles that unite us with everything in nature.
Mm. So the book, it includes direct transmissions from ancestral mothers, messages from the old ones. How do these actually arrive for you?
Well, in the beginning, it's not the way I imagined the book happening. I imagined the book would be a movement between very personal memoir, my storytelling, and much of this historical and anthropological and scientific research I've done. The book has lots of footnotes, you know what I mean? I don't just make an assertion. I've got a lot of research to back it up. Many of the books I just talked about. Early on in the process, Sandie, I would go for a walk early every morning up by the mountain behind my house. It's a beautiful mountain, Mount Guardian, and she has a very steep climb in the beginning, which puts off a lot of hikers. So I had the great joy of often being alone up there with the bears, the woodcocks, the salamanders, the frogs, whoever was showing up that day. And as I would hike up her, I would be thinking about my writing for the day. And then as I walked down, somehow that jogging motion, everything would fall into place. And I thought I was going to be writing very kind of nonfiction pieces about the history of how mothers have been treated before patriarchy, within patriarchy. But I found that the trees, the hemlock trees and the mountain laurel and the stones and the rivers were speaking to me. And that mountain was speaking to me. And by the time I got home, their voices were clamoring in my imagination. I don't hear them like a psychic or anything, but they were rising within me. And I think the thing that I did is I trusted those voices and I decided to get out of my own way and let them come through.
Did you have any idea when you started writing it that it was going to go so deep into your own
None,
personal story?
none, none. You know, I think the best writing surprises the writer.
Yes, yes. But did you also find yourself hesitating? You know, I don't want to write that. I don't want to share that.
You're always not sharing certain things. And, there are always the seven veils of revelation, right, when you're writing. And there's certain things that we don't write about. For instance, I'll tell you something I didn't write about. One of the things that really complicated my relationship with my mother that I do not write about in this book was her relationship with my older sister, who she really treated as the runt of the litter and was a very complicated, triangular experience. But my sister was alive as I was writing that book, and that's her story to tell, and it's not my place to tell the story of the living. After I wrote the book, my sister died unexpectedly.
Hmm.
And
Well,
so I feel more comfortable speaking about the complexities of that now. So I think when you're a writer, here's the thing. I don't mind sharing things about myself. But I also what else did I leave out from that book? I didn't write about myself as a mother very much because my children are alive. And I don't need to define their experience of me as a mother for the public world. That's our private realm. And one of the great joys of writing about the dead is they're dead. They don't, and I think it's very different when we write about, I try to respect the privacy of the living.
yeah, yeah. I mean, yes, your mother runs through this book like a force of nature. What did writing about her reveal for you, something that you hadn't seen before? Was there any surprises there?
Yeah. There was one surprise, and the biggest surprise of all comes towards the end of the book, and it breaks my heart, and it still breaks my heart. And that is when I was 22 years old and she came to visit me in college, and I was a very arrogant college student and very arrogant young woman in my 20s. And I wasn't aware, I didn't really get that my mother had not been allowed to go to college. She hadn't had that opportunity. And here I was sort of flaunting my education and just like the men had done to her whole life, right? I was just behaving like the men.
Yeah.
And I had a lot of spiritual yearning because I'd been raised in a non-religious household. So I had this curiosity. And I'm sitting there, giving her a terrible cup of coffee in my dirty little apartment. And she's been driven up to see me at, a great physical cost, actually. because she only had one eye. She'd lost one eye to polio. She had the eye, but she didn't see out of it. And and said to her, Mom, talk to me about God. Tell me what you believe and don't believe about God. And she just went, oh, God. And I was so angry that she wouldn't have me this conversation that I kept pushing her and kept pushing her. I said, well, what do you believe in? She said, oh, are you depressed? What's the matter with you? What does the matter with you? And we had no language for connection or intimacy. And now in retrospect, what would I say to that young 22-year-old girl? Well, I would say your mother was right. Who cares about God? It's nothing believe or disbelieve. The monotheistic God has brought more violence into the world than anything. It's the proper response. Good for you, Mom. Good for you. And I would have said, Mom, do you believe in your mother and grandmother? Do you believe they're there? Do you talk to them? And she would have said, I talk to them all the time. And I would have said, I believe in you. I believe your love will transcend life. I believe you will never leave me. And I wrote this book, Sandie, so that some other 22-year-old girl wouldn't find herself getting further and further away from her mother, but would find a new language for connection and intimacy.
It's a hard task for a 22-year-old girl.
It is a hard task. But at the feast day celebration, we had grandmothers bringing their granddaughters, mothers bringing their daughters, daughters bringing their mothers, and that's my dream.
Yeah. Yeah.
When women, during the witch craze, daughters were encouraged to turn in their mothers to the inquisitors to protect their lives. Every time we stand with our daughters and our mothers, we are being really radical in the face of this patriarchal overculture. My daughter lives 5 minutes from me. She's 32. She's my best friend. You want to talk about reading? That girl reads 3 books a day. My list is this high of books. And we read, we inspire each other, but we also stand by each other and with each other and for each other. And that's not been easy in this culture. Not been
Very
easy.
true. Very true. You call yourself a witch. Your work is rooted in animism, and yet the book draws on Catholic saints, Buddhist practice, your grandmother's rosary traditions. All of these are traditions that haven't been very kind to women or to the earth. How do you hold those contradictions?
Roots. All of these religions, in order to grow, had to graft themselves onto the folk roots of what was already there. And so, and this, if you look at all the books I've given, this bibliography, if you go look at a village in the Middle Ages, one of those villages with 200 feast days, those people have been living in those villages for thousands of years, way before Christianity, way before any kind of organized religion. They're not literate. They're not reading the Bible. The priests aren't reading the Bible. I'm fascinated by this oral culture that precedes scriptural literacy. And so, for instance, once this one priest who's going around in England, he comes to this village and he starts asking people who Jesus is. And nobody knows. Nobody has heard of Jesus. They call themselves Christian because they're supposed to. Nobody knows who Jesus is. And finally, one farmer says to him, isn't that the fellow that hangs upside down on a tree once a year so his blood can replenish the soil? So what happens is what we call syncretism, that these people have been devoted to the mothers, to the mother goddesses forever. So statues of Isis and Horus get refashioned as Madonnas.
Yes.
Literally refashioned as Madonnas. People are calling on Our Lady of Lourdes, but Our Lady of Lourdes is in a grotto, a cave, where there's been human habitation for 200,000 years. So how long have people been devoted to that womb portal of Our Lady of Lourdes? And one of the things my husband and I like to do is look for the sediment, the folk sediment in all religions, whether it's Buddhism, Hinduism, Christianity, Judaism, to find the root stock that will help us grow again and that will help us. And, the reason that Protestantism wants to get rid of the Virgin Mary, wants to get rid of the saints, is it wants to live in its head. It wants, Protestantism is basically there to establish capitalism in the world, and it wants to set itself against nature. And I mean, all institutional religion is a nightmare. It's all about, religion is invented by patriarchy. The monotheistic God is an invention of patriarchy to keep people literally in line.
Yeah.
So how do we but we don't want to throw out the baby with the bathwater. I mean, my husband and I wrote a book about the rosary. Bead traditions are at least 150,000 years old.
Yeah.
The rosary is an umbilical cord back to the mother goddesses. And how do we follow those beads, bead by bead, footstep by footstep, prayer by prayer? I mean, we write in our book about the Hail Mary is a hymn to the triple goddess that emerged from the voices of grandmothers as a way. My daughter sometimes says the Virgin Mary is the last goddess as a stowaway inside the Catholic Church to help us get back to the ancient mothers.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about this particular book. I mean, for anyone who's ever known a rosary as a kind of Catholic devotional, in your hands, it's something completely different.
It is, I'm wearing one right now. I don't wear a cross on mine, and no more than I would a machine gun. But, if we look, if anyone's listening, and I've written a book about the mothers, if you hold beads in your hands, and if you hold a bead, if anyone's listening and has a button, an earring, or even a bit of lint to roll between your thumb and forefinger, that gesture is one of the oldest gestures we have as primates. And it is the most comforting of gestures. And you watch how your body begins to feel as you roll that bead between your thumb and forefinger. Do you know what it's reminding us of, Sandie? It's the first gesture we have as infants. We reach for our mother's nipple and we roll it between our fingers, and the milk lets down. And not only does the milk let down in the mother's body, but a hormone lets down in the baby's body and in the mother's body called prolactin that creates a sense of ease and rest and joy and intimacy. And when we make that gesture and we pray that rosary bead by bead, nipple by nipple, the milk of the Milky Way lets down into our bodies, and we're filled with prolactin. We're filled with that sense of consolation of all the mothers of the cosmos.
Now,
It's a great
this is a book, as I understand it, that your husband was writing, and then you came into it later and worked on the book with him. What inspired your husband to write this book?
Well, here's the thing. My husband taught me the rosary, and it's a crazy thing. I converted to Catholicism in college for about 5 minutes. The mothers determined that I would get pregnant just before I was baptized, so I had an abortion 2 days after I got baptized as a Catholic. It didn't take, you know what I mean? Like, I got confronted with a choice, and I made my choice for the mother. And I became a mother in having an abortion. I teach workshops on abortion. I think it's a really, it's the power of the dark mother. She initiates us into. But I never learned the rosary. I wasn't taught the rosary, but in my a year of Catholic study, learned a lot about liberation theology and social justice, a lot about Catholic doctrine, but I was not given the rosary. I wasn't given the saints. I wasn't given any of the folk practices that Vatican II was really designed to marginalize. And that's what I wanted. I wanted that folk magic. I didn't know I wanted it, but it's what I was reaching towards. Then I left Catholicism, and then I went into Buddhism, and I tried, I went to another patriarchal tradition like a lot of people do. My husband had been a very successful Zen student, had been set to and become the first Rinzai Zen master in America. He had gone to a Zen Buddhist monastery as a 19-year-old, and he left. He abandoned it all because he was so horrified by the culture of abuse and violence within these institutions. It's a very, very gentle soul. And he became the editor of a Buddhist magazine, exposing the teachers for all of them. Let me just tell you, one after the other. It's just like the Catholic Church, right? Like, they're all abusing little children.
Yeah.
Done. Okay. It was just monstrous. And he set off on it. He was on his own journey of looking for some spiritual sustenance that didn't create violence in the world. And one day I knew he'd prayed the rosary. I knew he learned, but let me tell you, he did Habodadit with the rabbis. He went and studied Kabbalah. He went and studied, dream yoga. He is a spiritual adventurer of, he's collecting spiritual practices everywhere. And out of the blue one day, I asked him to teach me the rosary. And it really, as a young mother, an overwhelmed young mother, and it took. I immediately prayed the rosary. He did not pray it with me for 15 years. He went off on his adventures spiritually. I just prayed my rosary beads. Mother of God was my koan, and it really was the koan that undid all of patriarchy.
Mm.
And then he came back to the rosary after a very profound experience on June 16th, 2011, which was a miracle in my eyes.
Are you able to share that experience with us?
Sure. Bring him in. He can tell you the story right now if you want. I mean, he's in the next room taking care of the puppy.
Well, no, he can do his 10 best list. This is your one. But yes, ask him to do his.
He's a bigger reader than I am, except they're all going to be medieval texts or obscure spiritual texts. I tell you, he reads very deeply in the old spiritual texts. On the evening of June, early morning hours of June 16th, he walks every night in the darkness, and he will tell this story in his own words, and he does tell it in his own words in the book Waking Up to the Dark. He was about to go for his evening walk out in the darkness, which he loves, under the stars. He's done this since he was a very little boy. When he heard a voice, he does not hear voices, say to him, "Do not go out tonight. Stay very, very still." Well, he knows how to do Zen meditation. He can be very, very still, which he did. And he went and sat on our couch. And his eyes were shut. In a moment, he felt someone in the room with him. And when he opened his eyes, there was a woman standing in front of him. And as he said, she was the realest thing he'd ever seen in his life. And over her mouth was an X of black electrical tape. And he was undone by this experience. And he knew he had only one job, which was to take the tape off of her mouth, which he did. And then the Zen part of him, as he said, won over, which was, this is an illusion. This is a fantasy. I'm having a vision. I need to go back to my Zen. So he shut his eyes. And when he opened them again, she was gone. He can tell you this story in his own words, and does, and it's important. How did I react to this? At the time this happened, we had a very sick child. She'd been sick for a year. We'd lost our jobs. I did not need my husband to be having, some psychotic experience, which is the way I reacted to it. I did not react with reverence or awe. I reacted with horror. Mm-hmm. Until the lady herself began speaking. And he began writing down what she said. And I've edited my husband for 30 years. We've written together. Writers' voices. You know what writers are capable of. You know how they compose. You know how they get to where they're going. We read each other our journal entries, our finished pieces, our everything, right? This was not my husband's voice. And what she had to say was profound and life-changing and reorienting and awe-inspiring. And she has been speaking since July 2011. She speaks on the 16th of every month. Every message is on our website, wayoftherose.org, and you can go read them for yourself and see. She has a lot to say about the world we live in and the natural world that's returning, and how to navigate those changes.
How does she identify herself?
She never did. And so she's asked us to figure that out. And the way I understand it, Sandie, I understand it. My husband might say something different. In the beginning, he related to her as Kali. And he wrote a series of love poems to Kali, and he did a long study into Kali. And when she asked him to pray the rosary, he sort of thought, oh, no, I'm going to have to become Catholic. I'm going to have to talk to the bishop. But he didn't. She said, no, the editors are the new bishops. I think of her as Our Lady of Woodstock. And what does it mean to call someone Our Lady of Einsiedeln, Our Lady of Rocamadour, Our Lady of Lourdes, Fatima, or, you know, we can go around the world calling the Our Ladies. There's so many. Our Lady of Walsingham. What I've begun to understand is that the mother doesn't want monotheism. She doesn't want to exchange God for goddess. She wants to exchange God for everything.
Yes.
And when the mother appears, she's speaking to you, the land beneath your feet is speaking to you. And that land, that dirt beneath our feet is nothing but the bodies of the dead. Go out and grab a handful of dirt anywhere you are, a city, a country, it doesn't matter. You are holding the decayed bodies of insects, of rodents, of birds' feathers, the droppings from other animals, the dead plants. You're even holding stones that were once oceans that have died. And you are holding the body of the dead. And the voices of all of those souls are speaking through these ladies. And it's why the ladies have different flavors. You know, water that comes up through stone and dirt takes on the flavor of that stone and dirt, right? Water that comes up from Lourdes has the flavor of Lourdes, and those are healing waters. But the water that flows up through Our Lady of Rocamadour is an ancient, deeper, different water. Same with Our Lady of Einsiedeln. Or Fatima, you know, my goodness, Fatima water is not water I want to drink quickly. And they're different flavors, and because they're speaking from the land. It's like Russian nesting dolls, right?
Yeah.
Every mother is held within the body of another mother. And so all of these ladies, Our Lady of Woodstock, Our Lady of Walsingham, Our Lady of Rocamadour, are held in our Mother the Earth. But our Mother the Earth is held by the body of the black hole around which our solar system orbits. Our whole solar system orbits a black hole called Sagittarius A. Takes 350 million years to orbit that great dark mother at the center of our galaxy. But we don't even know where our galaxy is orbiting. 80% of the cosmos is dark matter, dark mother, the Black Madonna. But it's not one mother. It's mothers within mothers within mothers. Every mother has a mother. And how does that work in the natural world? Do I understand it to bring it all back home and intimate? I think our ancient ancestors knew this, which is a grandmother, an old grandmother dies and is reborn as the child of her granddaughter, right?
Mm.
We all return to each other. So the mother is the daughter is the grandmother. We're all holding each other and changing places. And the ultimate place my work takes people is to reclaim the knowing that we have more mothers than we know. And they're all here waiting to answer our prayers. There are mothers waiting for our phone calls. What do you need? You need us a little extra cash? I'm here. You need me to make you some soup? I'm here. You need love? I'm here. You need healing? I'm here. There isn't one mother. One mother will never be enough. One God will never be enough. But that's been a lie foisted on us by patriarchy. There are enough mothers, and there is enough love.
What is the most profound thing that she has said thus far?
That's a hard one, Sandie. I mean, she's reorganized my brain. Oh my goodness. Here's the thing we do. We've compiled a book of of the past 15 years of things she said. It's available on Amazon. We just put it together, you know, as a collection. And every time I open it up and I read one, I think, oh my gosh, that's the most profound thing I've ever heard. She said, this is what she said about the rosary. The rosary is my body. My body is the body of this world. Your body is one with that body. What cause could there be for fear?
Mm.
What cause could there be for fear? I think fear, the world is very frightened right now. We are animals in the midst of an extinction event, whether we acknowledge it or not. And we don't experience the human numbers as going extinct, but all around us, animals are going extinct, and we're animals. We know at a cellular level that huge changes are coming. And when animals are frightened is when they become mean, right? We become mean to other animals. You know, a frightened dog is a dangerous dog, and we are frightened dogs. Any ways that we can let go of fear and embrace faith in this moment will make us a less violent animal.
Yeah. Wise words. So the final question. This is something that we ask every guest. Steve Jobs gave everyone at his memorial service a copy of Autobiography of a Yogi. What book would you want to give to people at your memorial service?
Oh, it's always like when people ask you your favorite food or your favorite color. Oh, down to one. Oh, Prince Caspian by C.S. Lewis.
Oh, interesting. Wasn't
I
expecting.
know. It took me a moment. I went to Goodnight Moon. The reason Prince Caspian is C.S. Lewis was such a complicated figure because as animism got fuddled through Christianity, right? He fuddles
Mm.
everything because of Christianity. But at heart, he was a wild animist. And the wild animism of Prince Caspian, it was a book my mother loved. It was her favorite book. And in it, children feel tugged into the past, like into their long story. And it's about awakening the voices of nature again, beginning to sing with the trees, beginning to talk with the animals, to awaken the souls of the rivers. And when Narnia awakens, human beings are given a choice. You may stay if you are willing to be in conversation with the natural world. If you are not, we're happy to give you the rapture. I stay in Narnia, and I want to dance with the trees.
Mm.
And I want to awaken the rivers again, and I want to awaken the stones again. There's a marvelous moment at the end. There's a Dionysian feast at the end of Prince Caspian. I really recommend reading it. It is an animist guide, and it is about, you know, how can the very earth begins to make itself tasty at the end, bringing up loam to eat, and it's really a delicious book, and it's a book about the revival of the voices of the natural world. And we need to begin remembering that we're not the only voice. When I die at my memorial service, I don't know if I'm coming back as a tree or an animal or an insect or whatever, but I hope that I'm still in conversation with the human world.
Mm. Perdita Finn, thank you so much for sharing your 10 best list with the No BS Spiritual Book Club.
Thank you so much. This has been a blast. Thank you, Sandie.
So, a reflection for those of you at home. Most of us have spent time looking for something that we couldn't quite name. We try belief systems, practices, communities, and sometimes they help, and sometimes they don't. And we can't always say why. Perdita Finn's journey suggests that what we're actually hungry for may not be found in any tradition at all, but in something older and closer. The ground beneath our feet, the mothers behind us, the simple act of asking the dead what they know. That hunger isn't a problem to solve. It might just be the most honest thing about us. You can find more information about Perdita Finn's books, works, podcasts, and workshops at takebackthemagic.com. I'm Sandie Sedgbeer. For more information about my podcasts, Awakening Your Inner Storyteller writing course, and personal writing coaching and mentoring programs, visit sedgbeer.com. And if you're looking for a safe place to share your favorite inspirational books with like-minded others, check out our free community lounge at the nobsspiritualbookclub.com, where you can also access more than 2,600 trusted recommendations for books that inspired many new thought authors, teachers, and speakers who've walked this path before you. Until next time.
If today's conversation sparked your curiosity, you'll love our other shows. The Synergy Sessions, where leading-edge thinkers collide in bold, unscripted dialogues that ignite new possibilities. Between Realms and Reason, where we journey into the mysterious consciousness, energy, and the hidden layers of reality, where science converges with spirit in ways you've never imagined. And the No BS Spiritual Book Club, where leading-edge new thought speakers, teachers, authors, and luminaries who've walked this path before you share the 10 books that had the biggest impact on their life journey. All 3 shows are available on YouTube, Spotify, Substack, and all major podcast platforms. For more information, visit sedgbeer.com. That's SEDGBEER.com.